right, we're going to call the meeting to order. And first we'll go through roll call.
Rodriguez? Present. Swift?
Here.
Green? Absent. Fragoso? Absent. Kierline? Absent. Gonzalez-Parber? Here. Chair Newton?
Here. Okay, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I'm going to read the meeting protocol before we begin. The chair shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the commission has the responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at commission meetings. The commission and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motive of commission members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. And so first we'll have public comments on
Do we want to approve the agenda?
Oh, did I miss that? Yes, why don't we do that?
I recommend a motion that we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Chair Swift. So now we will get to go to public comments on non-agenda. Chair Swift. Vice Chair Swift. I'm jumping the gun in all sorts of ways tonight. Public comments on non-agenda items. So if anybody wants to come up and talk about an item that is not on the agenda tonight, please come up and introduce yourself. If you want to identify where you're from, that'd be great. And you can turn the little mic on and off as you speak. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, staff, council. Diana Perdue, 199 Scenic Road. And I'm here with the same subject as last month. I've not heard from any of you nor my neighbor Hussein Asghari about his new garage obstructing the flow of the creek with its substantial rear wall. I'll refresh your memory. A stream with a seasonal waterfall flows through his property. A catch basin of sorts is at the bottom of the falls. A normal rainfall takes the water into a channel under his car platform into a city-maintained culvert that runs under Scenic Road, emptying into a swale. In heavy rains, the catch basin gets overwhelmed and there's too much water to fit in his channel. The car park surface has a center section made of wooden planks. Prior residents at that house would remove those slats during heavy rains so that when the catch basin would fill and the channel could not handle all the water, it would allow the flow to run below and above the parking surface, into the tunnel and down the swale. The wall blocks this option. Other people have had, in the time 35 years I've lived there, have had tops on their car park, sides on their car park, but no one's ever had a back. The design he used to build this garage fails to address any of this. It obstructs the flow of the creek. It redirects the natural course of the stream by interrupting and trying to hold the water back. The water will now cascade down Scenic Road and the hill. This situation compromises the value of our homes, our safety, and I think it's the town's fault for not monitoring this project in a proper manner. And I would like my neighbor to fix this problem before he's allowed any more permits from the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just speak to that briefly. I think Diana left the meeting before we covered this, but the building official was there when that garage was built, and that channel that she's describing is still there. He painted the boards gray. They are still there, the boards that can be lifted out. The flooding that was caused in 2005 was because the water was coming down so fast that all our systems were overwhelmed. So the building department, the garage has been engineered, the drainage swale that's existed since whenever the garage was first built many, many years ago, it's all still in place.
I know it's still there, but the wall is blocking the entrance to the top of, when it goes over, when it's overwhelmed and the water can't go through his channel, in history, it goes over the top and then drops into the culvert, which is by the street.
So are you
and
saying
goes
the
under-
old garage didn't have a wall in the back?
Exactly.
Okay.
None of them have ever had walls in the back.
So I checked
So-
with the building official. The engineers looked at it, thought it was fine, but we can have them take a second look at that. But it doesn't, that's a previous project. It will.
I know it's a
yeah.
previous project, but winter is coming.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Purdue. Appreciate it. Yeah, I would like a second look at that, if that's something that I could ask you guys
We can have the
to
town engineers
do.
look at it.
Okay. Hi, Valerie.
All right, first I wanted to submit some information from Kaya Bossi, who asked me to bring this for your meeting for next week about the 5G. I just wanted to make a
Would
brief
you-
comment. I'm sorry?
Would you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, Valerie Hood, sorry, Valerie Hood, 79 Domingue Avenue. I spent 3 hours in front of the Good Earth today gathering signatures from Fairfax residents, business owners, healthcare professionals, and from residents from all over the area that are objecting to the 5G rollout. And one thing I realized today is how much this topic has created a lot of fear and anxiety in the community. And I think part of it is because no one but the telecoms seem to be in charge. There's no one to come to talk about this problem that we're having. It seems to me that Marin Telecommunication Agency could provide someone. They've been on this topic for a long time. We haven't heard any public outreach whatsoever about this. I think there's a lot of questions as to how this all came about, how it came about so quickly. I know that our business community here in Fairfax was approached by someone, a Fairfax resident, touting the wonders of 5G, but nothing ever came to the townspeople. And it doesn't seem to me that the business community should be in charge of a topic like this. I think that we should have, a town discussion. I really believe that we need a lot more discussion, and I'd really like this group, if it's possible for you, to give that sort of suggestion to Katie Rice, our supervisor, who has not shown up on this issue whatsoever. So far, we have Damon Connolly, and we have Dennis Rodoni, who've spoken really well. They've started a 5G task force, but we really need our representative to show up too. And I'm getting those sorts of signatures from all over San Anselmo and Fairfax, and people are outreaching. So you do have, the backing of the community, just to let you know. When I first started looking at this, I was aghast that we were once again dealing with microwave radiation and the telecoms, and that the telecoms believed they could actually take over our public right-of-way. I know that many of you have probably watched the public hearings that we've already had that were for the council. We've provided lots and lots of information to staff, and I hope that was given to you. I would like to know that it was. And I hope that you all have time to listen to the actually expert testimony that was given at the council meeting. We really turned people out. We had 60 people at the first meeting to talk about it. So, and it's only grown from there. So I really think that it's very important that we have some more public discussions, but that we also have a forum, the sort of thing that we organize for the smart meters. That was so helpful for the public to get a hand on this. Today what I heard is there are big installations going up all over the place, and what are they? And that's not my job to be answering that. And they're talking about different towns in Marin. They've been to the city, they've seen the 5G rollout, and they're just wondering, are they putting up the infrastructure here in San Rafael or wherever? What's going on? Well, my husband's an electrician, so we went to look at some of the things, and he knows that some of these things are not 5G, that they are other things. But it's just that when all this new equipment starts going up on the poles in the public right-of-way, people start to make conclusions that perhaps are real or not real. would be so good to have something on the town website to address this. We would so appreciate it. It's a lot of work for the public to take on, and we know how busy you all are, which is one of the reasons we did the research. We can't expect you guys to be the experts on everything in the world, but we're actually going to ask you to become experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Jess Lerner. I live here in Fairfax, and I sent all of you emails and requested meetings with you. Before I begin, and I am going to speak about 5G, I just wanted to acknowledge that I received an email today from Norma Fregosa, who is not here right now, and which had shared with me an email from Linda Neal that said that you guys are not obligated to meet with the public, which is true, and that you could violate the Brown Act if you meet with us. So I'm quite familiar with the Brown Act and have now met with all of the town council members and the mayor twice. And I'm part of the Fairfax task force for 5G Free Fairfax, and we have been working on this together. And so we're familiar with that law and how it works, and we honor it. And we understand that it means we would never share anything you say, and that you wouldn't be able to meet with more than 2 people at a time. And so with that in mind, we are still asking that you meet with us because we think it's very important that you receive some of the information we have to share. It's a small town, our opinions and our values matter, and there's so much more that we can convey to you, as Valerie just shared, with all the research and experience that we have. We're working with legal counsel to advise us. We have electrical engineers, former people who are formerly in the industry advising us, and all of us are coming together to create a really comprehensive overview for you. And that's something that, including our constituents, the constituents' feelings about this, so that's something that can't be simply provided by the town lawyer. So just wanted to encourage you to be willing to meet with us as individuals. So the first thing I want to address about the issue of 5G is that we're talking about a local control issue. So we want to figure out if we as a town decide what happens here or the industry does. And our local control is being stripped by corporations, so we need to do everything in our power to assert that local control. It's true that there's a concern about, not breaking the law and making sure we don't get sued, and that's something we're looking at very carefully. We're not just blatantly saying, oh, you have to ban this and then get sued. We're saying there are a lot of strategies for how to go about this, and we can show you some of those strategies. And corporations are writing laws all the time and telling us what to do, but there are also more significant values and ethics to consider as we go through this as a town. So on that note, I want to go over a few of the issues that we've been looking at. We're going to be submitting to you a document that has the urgency ordinance changes and additions that we're requesting as we go through this. And I just want to bring up the subject of zoning. So the current urgency ordinance, as it's been amended, has a list of preferences, and we'll share this with you later about exactly where to find that in the ordinance. And we are recommending that you eliminate all zones that have any residential in them, and that includes CC, CL, and PD. So that would leave CS and CH. So again, that's CS and CH as, potentially permitted, and CC, CL, and PD as eliminated. So that's, the CL is Deer Park Villa, and the PD is the middle of town, and the
Jess,
CC is mixed use.
Can we just have general comments? This is a lot of
Sure.
detail,
You got it.
and I don't
Okay.
think we're going to be able to absorb it, and I
Okay,
don't
sure.
want to take a lot of time.
Got
with
it, and that's why we wanted, that's why I wanted to meet with you guys, because there's so much more than we can cover in a 3-minute public comment. So I will close there for now, but I just wanted to give an overview of some of the things that we're talking about as issues that relate to 5G potentially coming to Fairfax. We know it presents the highest risk to children, the sick, and the elderly. We know there are loss of property values up to 30%, major fire hazard potential, harm to nature, potential threat to privacy, much easier to hack, 24/7 exposure to electromagnetic radiation, especially for people who have electric health sensitivity like myself, aesthetics, which would disrupt the character of the town, 100 times slower speeds than fiber optics, which will likely come soon to Fairfax, and it discriminates against those with electromagnetic sensitivity, which is a disability recognized by the ADA. So those are just some things to consider, and we look forward to speaking with you more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, I'm Paige Hudson. I'm a Marin County native, born and raised, spent my entire life here. I'm currently residing in Mill Valley, but I work with Jess and others on this issue of 5G and have been an integral part of informing and meeting with county supervisors and city council members and mayors across the county. I'm here tonight just to address one particular point that I think is a critical one, having to do with strengthening the current ordinance, urgency ordinance, and I will be very mindful that you have a full agenda and I will be very brief. But what I would like to encourage you to consider is something much broader, above and beyond the issues you've heard Jess talk about, which is property values, fire safety, and of course health hazards, and that has to do with reflecting, I think, some of the values, some really wonderful values that you share here in Fairfax, and that is about equity, about supporting one another, and a shared sense of community. And my big concern about the current ordinance is that while it's a great start to protecting some of the residential zones, it really misses the beat on an important part that makes Fairfax unique, in that there's a pretty significant amount of mixed use and commercial zones that are not protected. And I don't feel that those issues of economics and where you live should dictate whether or not you get a pass on being exposed to dangerous wireless radiation 24/7. So I really urge you to look very hard at how you're reflecting the concerns and issues of the mixed-use space and the residents and businesses in those, particularly childcare, medical facilities, and those of the elderly. Lastly, I just want to point out that while, of course, we're very mindful of this issue of potential litigation on a federal level and from the FCC, I would ask you to think about how the residents are going to feel if they learn, the uproar they're going to feel if they learn that just because they don't live in a residential area, they're not being protected from these really, really significant issues. You might even want to ask the telecoms to indemnify you, because I believe the litigation concern is going to be coming from angry residents and constituents in this community if they felt there wasn't an equality in terms of their protection. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Roberta Anthes, 2 Snowden, Fairfax. If this is too detailed, stop me. I'll come back on Wednesday. But it does relate to everything that people have said so far. My concern about the new ordinance is, first of all, I'm for all the amendments that people will present to you present to you later. My concern is the exemption clause. In the ordinance, according to law, there's an exemption clause. And we can have a strong ordinance, but if this exemption clause stands the way it is, it'll threaten to undermine most of the provisions that we have. The exemption clause reads that exemptions may be granted by the reviewing authority if denial violates federal and/or state law. The law it refers to is the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996, which preempts and declares invalid state or local rules that prohibit the provision of interstate and intrastate telecommunications services or personal wireless services. The language is so broad here that nearly any application we deny through our local rules could be interpreted as prohibitive. So we're vulnerable, basically, to anything they want. We could exclude the exemption clause, that's one possibility, but they could still request exemptions under the FTA. Our ordinance might already have a provision in it that would give us some purchase. I'm not going to give you this section and all that, but it deals with the ADA. All facilities shall be built in compliance with the ADA. The ADA recognizes EMS as a disability, and it prohibits discrimination under the Equality Act. Public accommodation must prohibit exclusion, segregation, and unequal treatment, and this applies to the workplace as well as to public spaces. Given the very high percentage of people in Fairfax with EMS, I don't see how, in good faith, Fairfax can comply with the FTA and the ADA at the same time. I feel that we need to add a clause to the exemptions chapter that says the reviewing authority may not grant an exception if the exception itself violates federal and/or state laws, including but not limited to the ADA. The ADA is not a state or local rule to be preempted. It's a federal act which stands equal to and could preempt the FTA. So there will be cases in Fairfax where we can't obey both of those laws. And I think that in those cases, the telecoms should have to build their facilities to accommodate the sufferers, and that's more detail than you want. But,
No, I do appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, I'll be back on Wednesday, I'll say it again.
Okay.
Richard Applebaum, 61 Woodland. I'm here to just speak a little bit because I realize this, that the 5G thing has crept up on everyone, and there's a sort of education process going on. I very much encourage you to meet with Jess if you can. One of my concerns also about the emergency ordinance that went is that it was mostly based on the Mill Valley one, which I think a lot of people thought was fairly decent, but as we've been studying it, it's really not strong enough. And so I think it's really, really important that everybody in this town that's involved, whether it's planning commission, town council, legal, town staff, whatever, really come to understand these things. And while I realize that it's unlikely we're going to do an outright ban, I believe that there are with some little bit of creativity and some good thinking and working closely with everybody that's really on top of this stuff, that we can make it really unappealing to come here and really prickly. So again, it's really about getting people up to speed. As Valerie commented, it's just starting to create awareness around town, and everyone's like, oh my God, what's happening? And my own personal opinion is that really the reason 5G would even want to come to Fairfax at all is that the big telecoms like Verizon and AT&T want to compete with Comcast that has pretty much a monopoly on internet service to our town. But as we've been learning, we're in a good position for fiber coming to our town, and there could be some really interesting and creative things that could grow out of that. We might even be able to create some kind of little revenue source or something with some local utility things. So again, I know this isn't the topic tonight or whatever, but I think it's important that we get in here because things move quickly, and to know that there's a lot percolating all over Marin and in our town. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. My name is Rachel. I've lived here for about 16 years, and I've been a business owner here in the town for about 16 years. And I practice the healing arts. My business is just right across the stream. And I'm really surprised to come into this room and see so few people here, because I've been at the other meetings that have been discussing 5G, and the room has been overflowing with people, just wanting to share their comments about how much they oppose it. So it's interesting to stand here and see so few people, but you're also different people. This isn't the town council. This is the planning commission. So all I just felt to get up and say while I'm here is that I really care about this issue. For me personally, it's really a big effect on me. It's hard for me actually to even be in this room because of the industrial level of internet that's going on in this room right now, and different people with their cell phones. I have extreme sensitivity to it. And, I've lived with the reality of constant headaches and fatigue and anxiety from being around the EMF. It's a reality in my life. And so it really matters to me, knowing that if it was out of my control, that there is a 5G router right above my bedroom, and I cannot do anything about it. I cannot shut it off. I don't have freedom of my environment, of how it's affecting me. That's one reason I want to live here in Fairfax, is because, because we don't use spray out here, and I can not have a smart meter on my home. This is a big value of why people want to be in this town. The level of value on health and of autonomy and of being able to live in a healthy place where there's the places like the good earth and there's a like-minded community, So to me, the idea of that, some force from the outside is going to be able, and for profit, to be able to put up these things that are going to affect me and I can't do anything about it, going to affect my clients, going to affect my children, going to affect, the children of my friends. This is a very serious thing. So I don't have, statistics to give you. I can tell you that I've gone into bioinitiative.org and for many years have been researching this and have seen very clearly, and I hope that you also are doing research about scientific studies that very clearly show the connection between EMF levels and very serious health conditions. And yeah, that it's a real thing. And I know that it can't be fought on the level of health, which to me just sounds like a really messed up thing around like just suppression of the truth and the obvious, right? So anyway, I just want to say that for me, I know that a lot of people really care about this. I really care about this, and I hope that you, yeah, that makes a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reminds me to turn off my cell phone. Everybody else can do that too. So I don't hear anyone else here to talk about non-agenda items, so I'm going to close that part of our proceeding and go on to the next item. We have...
Before we call the next item, if I may?
Sure.
Okay. Looking at your agenda, the number 3 item is zoning amendment.
Yeah.
And so there's a section in your code here that says the recommendation of any amendment to this title, meaning the zoning code, shall be by resolution of the Planning Commission carried by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the total voting membership. So we read that to mean that you need 5 members present here in order to hear this item. It would be my recommendation that you continue this item to next week's meeting. And if you take a vote and do that, we will not have to renotice it.
Okay. Can we do that now, or do we do that
Well,
when we
you
get
can
to
do
that
it when
item?
you get to it, or you could do it now. If there are people in the audience, and don't make them sit through 2 items if they're here just for number 3. I don't know if there's anybody here for number 3, but I think it would be courteous to let them at least know that unless you anticipate another member joining you.
I don't anticipate another member joining me unless somebody knows something I don't. Nobody knows anything I don't, of course. Okay, so, yeah, let's go ahead, Michelle.
So I'll take a motion to continue item number 3 on the agenda of October 16th to the next regular, no, it's a special
October-
meeting
October
of
18th.
October the 25th.
Yes, and it's going to October 25th. Yes.
Is there a second?
I would second that. I would also ask if it's possible to address that item first.
Well,
At that
and
meeting?
I would rather that you continue the item to next week and not even open the hearing.
No, I think she means first on the agenda
Oh,
for the next
Yes,
week.
Yes, absolutely.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Unanimous? Okay, folks, so if anyone is here for the discussion and consideration of an ordinance to permit certain medical marijuana dispensaries to conduct adult use cannabis deliveries, that item will be continued to our special meeting on October 25th. We're going to schedule it first on the agenda, so for those of you who are here for that item tonight, thanks for coming down, and make sure you're available on the 25th. Come back. Okay, so we don't have any items on our consent calendar. So next is the first of the public hearing items. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Garrett. All right, everybody's going, we're all left alone. But Ben and Linda get to stay. Amanda's going, everybody's leaving. Okay, and we will hear a staff report about 216 Scenic Road.
Okay, if you will recall, this was continued from your September 20th, 2018 meeting when the commission agreed to allow the applicant to include a patio cover that he didn't realize needed approval into his current application. So the owner's applying to construct a 251 square foot bedroom and bathroom addition and the aforementioned patio cover. The addition would be located below the existing upper living level within the footprint of the existing structure. The patio cover that the owner is seeking to legalize is 104 square feet in size, and it's located over a portion of the existing patio on the east side of the residence. The patio cover is being requested because the large number of trees that shade the patio drop so much debris that without the cover, the patio is largely unusable. The project, including the patio cover, will comply with all the setback, height, floor area ratio, and lot coverage regulations for the RS6 zone where the site is located. Other residences in the hillside areas of the Fairfax Manor subdivision where this site is located are 200 to 500 square feet larger than the proposed resulting house. It does require a parking variance, which we covered in our staff report last time. And we did discover that the patio cover actually does meet the minimum 5-foot setback, so it doesn't require any setback variances. And we are recommending, based on our belief that the proposed bedroom addition does comply with the policies of the general plan, and we can make recommendations for findings for the parking variance, we're recommending that you approve the project by adopting resolution number 2018-15.
Thank you. And are there any questions of staff from commissioners?
There was a correction on the resolution.
Thank you. Yes. And I believe I wrote it in here. Yes, we forgot to eliminate on page 4 of the resolution under number 4, we need to remove item C. So we've added under miscellaneous conditions, condition 22, the building permit application for the project must include legalization of the patio cover and must be obtained prior to the start of construction on the addition. And we've removed that other one.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I will open the public hearing on this item, and I see the applicant is here tonight. And are there any questions for the applicant? Would anyone like to speak?
On, right? Yeah. Okay. I want to resolve that problem with drainage. So, what I was going to do, there are planks there, wood planks that you can't see through, that you cannot see through. I was going to replace it with grills, which is, you can, first of all, the water flows in, and then you can't see through, so you can clean it up, but I haven't got to it. So that should solve the problem of removing the planks and the stuff when there is a lot of water. About the back wall, I'm open if you are going to inspect it and you see that some of it has to be removed. You can do it. It's and I've been away, so I haven't had a chance to talk to that lady here. So, but I'm open to resolving the issue, but as long as I know what I need to do, So, that's it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can you push the mic off for me? Thanks. And I don't see anyone else here to speak on this item, so I'm going to close the hearing and bring it back to the commissioners. Anyone want to share their thoughts?
No, I kind of stand by my original statement that I support the project. And I think we were just looking for the patio legalizations, which has been included. So I'm still on board with supporting the project.
Does anyone else want to make a comment or a motion?
I would just like to propose a couple of modifications, but before I moved on the resolution, I wanted to just run it by folks, and that was on condition 1, requiring that the paint and just the paint match the existing building, because on the construction drawings, it doesn't identify that the colors to match existing, but I'm sure that's his intent, but I want to make sure. And then on condition 7, giving the planning director authority again, if it's a minor alterations, because this is saying any changes or modifications made to the approved set of plans will require a modification of this application, and I'd instead like to give the planning director or staff authority if there's minor changes but consistent with the intent of the plan for the project. So those are the two changes I'd like to propose in addition to Linda's number 4, C deletion. So I don't know if other people are comfortable with those changes, but that would be what I would move on.
I think if you're talking about, I don't have any problem with the one on number 1 about the paint. On number 7, giving the planning director and or staff authority to approve minor changes consistent with the intent of the design? Is that what you want to say?
The approval. So that would include the conditions of approval as well as the plan set.
Oh, I see, of the approval. Okay, thanks.
So I still have concerns with the parking on this one. And I've struggled with it a lot, both at the last meeting and thinking about it for this meeting. I think as a cabin without a bedroom, the parking was legal. And now with the bedroom, although we're not, adding any space, I'm not sure that, the findings, when I look at the space, we've got a fire hydrant across the street, we've got no parking, in front of it, it's a one-way street. When we look at the findings for me, we're talking about not creating a safety hazard, neither present or anticipated future traffic volumes generated by the site would change. Staff's comment that, with the size of this and the small bedroom, it's not, they don't foresee that the number of people that would be occupying this and that would have vehicles would expand. It's just a difficult one for me considering, the location and the concerns with safety for the parking piece. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I'm not sure if others' thoughts on that are different.
Yeah, my thoughts are different. I feel like somebody's got to live in the cabin, and making it a one-bedroom shouldn't legally transform that dwelling unit into a different size dwelling unit to require a change in the parking requirements.
I also disagree. You know, I'm kind of looking at this as a matter of, I guess, special privilege compared to what everybody else has in this area. And it's almost, I think, it starts to feel almost punitive because somebody started off with a studio because whatever the reason, the design or the budget, I'm sure there are a lot of things that went into that decision. But I'm looking at the table where it compares the other properties in the neighborhood, and these guys, without a bedroom, are still way ahead of providing, parking, a garage. There are 4 other properties here that don't even have a garage. This one does. The floor area ratio is smaller than any of the other properties. And it's asking for 1 bedroom, where some of the other properties have up to 3. And I think that this is one of the areas of the code where it's up for interpretation, which maybe wasn't the intent behind the code for the parking requirement. Maybe just didn't take into account this type of dwelling. So I almost feel like it feels punitive to deny because these guys started off smaller. And I think people have a right to improve their properties, which in turn add value to our neighborhoods and, the town. So just looking at this, I guess from somebody who's in the trenches all the time, I think it's pretty fair, in my opinion.
Question for staff on that table where you've got the garage identified for the surrounding properties. Was that specifically a garage, or did that also include carports and that type of thing?
It can include carports, but what I think isn't counted is some of these zeros may be just uncovered parking decks. So I got this from the tax assessor. But can I also I just want to read one of the general plan findings, which I included, because policy land use 7.2.3, traffic and parking concerns related to new and renewed development shall be addressed in a manner that does not result in undue hardship or significant negative impacts on properties and infrastructure in the vicinity. And I just think that kind of speaks to this property. There you go, that's all.
So I'm prepared to move on the resolution if you are. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2008-15 with the following modifications: that condition number 1 include that the paint shall match the existing building, deleting condition 4C regarding legalization of the patio cover, modifying condition 7 to add after application number 18-16 unless minor changes are proposed and consistent with the intent of this approval may be approved by planning director. And that's it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, the ayes have it, which means the project is approved. There is a 15-day waiting period. 5-day
Sorry,
waiting.
10.
10, whatever. No, 10-day waiting period and a $500 fee for an appeal of this decision. If no one appeals it, then you're good to go. So thank you very much.
Can you please talk to your neighbor? Please go next door and knock on the door and speak with her. Thank you.
Okay, and then we're going to go on, and you're free to go off and do whatever you want now, unlike us and you. So we are now going to turn to item number 2, and somebody else have the staff report, or is it you again, Linda?
Yep. So this project encompasses the construction of a 304-square-foot storage room beneath an existing 2-car garage. The storage room will provide 183 internal square feet of storage area that has a ceiling height of 7.5 feet, and the remaining 82 square feet will be on raised platforms tucked up under, to comply with the slope of the hillside. So you won't be able to stand up in 92 square feet of it. The proposed project does not change the setbacks that are currently maintained by the property now. And due to the very irregular, elongated, triangular shape of the parcel, there is no location for a storage structure that would be out of all the setbacks. Locating the storage room underneath the garage will minimize the impacts to the site and the vicinity. The addition is approximately 30 feet higher in elevation than the properties across the 30-foot wide Tamalpais Road right-of-way. The 2 properties are currently vacant, and they're very, very small. So anyway, if they ever were developed with anything, they would be at a much lower elevation than the addition. Other properties in the vicinity have similar 2-story garage structures, some of which are used as living space and some of which are used as storage. And based on our ability to make the required findings, we're recommending that you approve application 1817 by adopting resolution 2018-16, which sets forth the findings and the conditions for the project approval.
Okay, thank you very much. And does anyone have a question for staff?
Just a quick question. Linda, can you address the fire sprinkler?
Can.
Thank you.
So, one of the commissioners, Commissioner Swift, was questioning the fact that they were requiring sprinklers, the Ross Valley Fire Department, so we clarified with them, and they said there's 3 triggers that are requiring sprinklers in this, this structure. And it is the substantial addition that's being made to the garage structure, its distance from the closest fire hydrant, which is quite a distance away at the intersection of Scenic and Tamalpais at the end of the the tip of the property. It's quite a distance away. And the narrowness of the road is what is why they're asking for it to be sprinklered. So.
Great, thanks. Any other questions?
I do have a question. Do we know how much grading is going to occur, or is it just going to tuck under that?
I believe it's just going to tuck under, but you might double check that with the applicants. There might be some new piers going in, but it will be very minimal grading under probably under 2 cubic yards, I would think, which is the trigger for even requiring a grading permit from the building department. But he can probably speak to that.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open up the public hearing, and I take it we've got the applicants here. Good evening. And we do have a question for you, if you don't mind coming up to the podium and going to the microphone so we can get your answers on the record. So Commissioner Rodriguez has a question about the grading that is part of the plan and whether there's going to be any significant grading going on or excavation.
Yeah. So it's been designed such that there is no need for grading underneath. It all tucks underneath the existing structure. Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? And you guys have anything else to add? Okay, great. I guess we'll close the public hearing then, seeing nobody else here. It's only 8 o'clock. Where is everybody? Oh, yeah, there's still time. No, I'm closing the public hearing now. So even if they show up, it's too darn late. I'll bring it back to the commission. Does anybody want to make a comment?
I have no problem with this application, and I would support it.
I agree.
I could move for approval of it. I just wonder if we should have an addition to condition 1 that says something about this shall not be a living area or a bedroom or something like that, or do we care? I mean, we're not processing a variance for parking, but it's big enough to be a living space.
But I think it's identified as unconditioned space in there, right?
Well, I think that if there is because this is a storage room and not a living area, that there are less bells and whistles than if it was a living, adding a bedroom, for example. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't add something to say that. If you have specific language.
So I move for approval of resolution 2018-16 with condition 1 being modified to read, the use shall not be living space. Period.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. So unanimously passed. And this time I think there is a 10-day waiting period and a $500 fee for filing an appeal. So if no one does that within 10 days, you'll be good to go. So thank you very much for coming in to the Planning Commission this evening. Have a good night. And that takes us to, I'm not even going to offer us have a break. I think it's only 8 o'clock and we don't need a break. And discussion items, there's no discussion items scheduled for this meeting. So we'll go to the minutes from the September 20th meeting.
I can start off on that. So page 1, the second paragraph under public comments, the name Stephen Keys should be Stephen Keese. Page 2, last paragraph. Oops. I lost that one. Somebody else can continue while I find my second one.
Okay. Mine was on page 3, starting with the middle of the page, starting with Ms. Green and Rodriguez. The third line up, minor amendments consistent with the intent of the design. So we're just missing of the. And that's similar, one paragraph up where it starts with Commissioner Rodriguez provided the following comment, and it's consistent with the intent of the design. So it's just of the that's missing. And on page 7, I'm sorry, I can't remember what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections down where it says Commissioner Green, Rodriguez, and Chair Newton provided the following comments. Bullet 1, they would like to have another look at micro businesses, and then bullet 2, they could be more closely regulated. What do you know what that meant?
I think you meant that maybe we should look at micro businesses because there may be a way to more closely regulate them that would make them palatable to the town. I think that's what you guys meant. Cindy's nodding yes.
I think so.
Okay, so then we would need to either add micro businesses. Micro businesses could be more closely regulated then instead of they would, because the topic at the top isn't starting with the following comments on micro businesses, so you can either put it there or in that second bullet. Thank you.
Okay, I found my place again. Back to page 2, the last paragraph above consent calendar. So it says Commissioner Swift asked a question about the installation of the shields, but it doesn't say what I asked. So what I was asking was whether all the new lights were going to get shields installed, or if it was only based on citizen concerns about particular lights. And the answer was citizen concerns from the town manager. Page 5, the fourth paragraph from the bottom, the third sentence. It's not clear as to what I was saying, so it says here, the code states that a permittee shall not transfer ownership or control of a dispensary or a dispensary permit unless they obtain a use permit. And so that's not really clear as to who the they is. And what I was asking was dispensary permit unless, dispensary permit to another person unless that person obtains a use permit. Oops. Sorry. And I think that's all I've got.
Oops, I just turned it off. Okay, thanks. Let's see, what page is that? Page 5, second from the bottom. It says Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber asked if staff had considered checks and balances with respect to state law, permitting, et cetera. And I think it just needs to be clarified with, it should say something like with respect to state operational permits and local building permits. It's not clear. And then on page 7, second from the bottom, again, it just, if you can just add cultivation at the end of that sentence to read, she changed her position to support allowing outdoors cultivation. I mean, I think it's kind of clear from the statement before that, but yeah. Yeah. I think that's it.
On page 6, Patrice Bryan is Patrecebryan. I don't have any other changes. Does some,
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended, or corrected, rather, sorry.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously passed. Okay. We will move to the planning director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. A couple things tonight. The first has to do with a reminder that at the next Planning Commission, the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting in November, where the commission has to elect a new chair and vice chair. So start to...
Do we do that in November, December?
Well, this... Sometimes things get canceled and things like that. It just specifies that it has to be done by then. So I'm just thinking it would be easier to do it at November, but it's up to your choice. Well, you could have it.
Well, let me just tell you what we've done in the past. We've scheduled it for December, and then if it doesn't happen, we do it in January is what we normally do. We don't.
Sounds good to me.
Early, but that's.
Okay. As long as I suppose the first action taken in January is to install that person, so that any action taken in the new year, persons rather, would be reflective of their new position. So okay, that's the first reminder, and we'll follow up on that. I was requested by the chair to remind commissioners about email addresses. It's very interesting because in the town's planning commission group email, with the exception of Commissioners Rodriguez and Swift, everyone else has a town of Fairfax email address. But in the typical packet mailing, which Linda does, it's all personal email addresses. I'll give you a quick reminder, because we discussed this in January of this year, and I think maybe even one additional time. The rationale behind having a town email address is it draws a line between your personal and private email communications and town business. And if you were to simply access town email, town business related emails via the town's email address, if there were an action compelling discovery or some such under either the Public Records Act or the Freedom of Information Act, that your personal email would be inviolate. It wouldn't be subject to search. Now, as a practical matter, it would be redacted out. Somebody would look at it, somebody besides you, quite possibly, and they would have to kind of go through it and say, oh, there's an email about Miranda Heights, for example, or whatever, something that somebody's really concerned about and is just basically getting all the information they can get. So if you don't do that and you get it through your personal email, then you could get such a request and would have to comply. So I believe not all planning commissions are even afforded this option. Typically, they just, give us your email address and then they send stuff to you. But the town does allow you that. Now, that's not to say that for good and sufficient reasons, individual commissioners may choose to continue. I guess because there is a little bit of a discrepancy between what we do on a group mail and what we do in terms of, say, packet mail-outs, it would be a good question is, do commissioners want to switch to the town email address, or do they want to remain as a personal email address?
And thanks, Ben. I just want to comment on that. I know you probably got more of your report to go through, or is that it? Or so just briefly, I asked Ben to say that because I think it's easier for the general public to get in touch with us and not have to hunt for our personal emails if there's a town email available on the town website, for example. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and we're also getting more and more requests that include requests for all emails related to a specific subject. It seems to be becoming standard where they say, we want all your records, we want all your permits, and we want all emails regarding this address. You know what I mean? People are including it now.
So you're welcome to mull that over. Obviously, we don't have the entire commission here tonight. So we can take a poll tonight of the four of you, or we could push that back, or whatever your preference.
Or could we opt in as individuals?
At any time in the future, yes. Okay.
I believe the clerk, you guys can tell me, did the clerk send out instructions for how to go about getting one of those? Because she tells me she did.
She may have. I have not had a chance to look
her,
at my email.
Yeah, why don't
recently.
I have her send it again? It was a long time ago. So I'm going to have her send whatever she sent out before again to all of you. And that'll help.
Yeah, and just to bring you completely up to date, I was discussing this with the clerk today, and we're going to have to work on passwords too. So it may take a little while before we can make that switch over, but I have one commissioner who's requested that. Okay, so. Duly noted. The woman in purple.
It's International Purple Day today, by the way. I think there's 3 of them throughout the year, but this is one of them. Purple? Yeah. It's like epilepsy awareness in March, and LGBTQ, and another one in Australia. Anti-bullying. So next year, you can all wear your purple.
I think it would be great. Actually, I think it would simplify my life to have a dedicated email, because I'm guilty of missing that instruction email because it just gets buried with everything else. And as a matter of fact, that was one of my hesitation to respond to Jess Lerner. So I was trying to figure out how to reconcile her request with my privacy. At some point I'd like to reach out to her, but we can talk about the Brown Act after this. So it's just for the record, I'm all for a dedicated email.
So I actually have had one and told you guys that I had one for a while. And when I have been emailing, I've been copying my email, my town email address with that, plus keeping my communications in a separate folder. And as long as it auto forwards for me when I need it.
So I can eliminate your personal email and just have your town, okay?
Send me a test.
We'll do that and ask for a response, and that way we'll know that it's working. Okay, super, and then we'll just poll the other 3 members of the commission at a future meeting, but thank you. I think you'll be glad you did it. Okay, moving on to other items. I'm sure you saw that the town council took action regarding tree committee. Unfortunately, Commissioner Kerline is not here to receive the welcome news, but they acknowledge that it's very difficult with people's busy lives to ask people who are already giving up much of their available free time to serve on one group to also obligate them or some member of that other group to sit on the tree committee. So they've gone to a town-appointed at-large membership for the, well, whichever one was previously designated for participation from the Planning Commission and the Open Space Committee, I believe. So that will change. I have communicated with the town arborist. I intend to conduct a tree training session for the Planning Commission because along with that action, basically they provided the Planning Commission with the authority to take final action on tree alteration or removal permits on projects that come before them, which only makes sense. It's been noted even by members of the tree committee that it puts them in a very difficult position to be asked to opine on a project that the Planning Commission has already approved.
So on that, because I had questions and I didn't look at what was finally, because it was postponed at one council meeting to the next one. I didn't look at where it was actually addressed, but I had questions concerning that as far as whether we were talking about just tree removals or we were talking about alterations, and then really when we talk about alterations, what we were meaning in that sense for it to come before, the Planning Commission. So if we had an application that came in that, let's say, didn't have any tree removals, but they wanted to alter some trees, would that then be a part of what we look at, and what does alteration mean? So just throwing that out there.
You had correctly pointed out that it wasn't clear in the original proposal before the town council, the code amendment, that it would also specify tree alterations. It does now. So the language that was recommended to the council and adopted by them does include alterations. And we will provide that information regarding alteration when we have that session. So that's that.
Hold on, go ahead.
Just one point on that. So I've been kind of following what's going on with the tree removals in the town, and just so I kind of communicate what I think would be coming to us is that if there's going to be an impact to native trees, either removal or alterations as defined, I think, by the ordinance, then I'm going to want to see a certified arborist report, not a tree removal company's report. And so the distinction for me is that state certified arborists have their own standards of care and evaluation practices and protection practices that I'm leaning towards for a separate independent report. Somebody who's removing a tree can be an arborist, but should not be the one hired to remove the tree and do the arborist report. They should be separate and independent. So I wanted to communicate that because that's not what's happening at the tree removal committee or the tree committee. They're allowing people who've been hired to remove the trees do the report and come and present to them why the tree should be removed, and then go off and remove the tree. So that's an oddity I don't support.
But I guess, and we'll go into this more when we discussed that, but from my sense, it's that, and from what Laura had said, that they usually, the tree committee will ask and can ask for an arborist report when they feel it's necessary, and I think when somebody's given a permit or request a permit, just a regular citizen who's requesting a permit, not necessarily somebody coming through with, an application, that, it's made clear to them that it may be to their benefit to do that at the beginning. But then the other point that you made about, and we'll get into that again when we have the training, is, is this just native trees, or are we looking at everything? So just some questions out there.
Yeah, and we can probably, perhaps in advance of the Ray Moritz town arborist session, go and walk through the tree chapter, just so it's real clear what trees are involved, et cetera, because it's a good thing to do. So all for a future meeting. Okay, and let's see. For December, I believe, Linda, you communicated with the Planning Commission that the recommended meeting date was December, the regular meeting date is December 20th, and I think we have a quorum.
We have a quorum, but a number of people said this is awfully early and they can't guarantee, things happen, right?
Yeah.
So right now, we do have a quorum.
So what we would request, because I can guarantee you we will be loaded for the foreseeable future with items, that you can kind of block it out. And then, so we don't end up in a situation where we have an involuntary continuance, because much of what we'll be discussing will be ordinances. So, you just end up with one of these involuntary continuances, which doesn't really serve anybody very well. So just a note on that. Planning Commission Academy, Long Beach, March 6th through 8th, 2019. Throwing it out there. I think everybody who went down to Monterey enjoyed it. We'd have to look at how we would do the transportation and other travel-related items, but certainly if commissioners wish to go to it, I think other people who have attended speak highly of that training. In terms of updates, your commission next week, the notices will be going out tomorrow. We'll be looking at 5G. It was kind of interesting seeing those folks are passionate, but that will be on the table, and we will also be looking at a modification of our zoning ordinance to deal with a very limited scope on objective development standards. So I'm not going to here discuss it. And marijuana in that more focused arena. So, and if we intend to loop back to the more broad-based discussion at the regular Planning Commission meeting in November.
So a question, because I saw the two notices go out for next week's meeting. One was, the 5G, so I assume you're going to have a draft ordinance for us. The second notice that went out was related to PDD. So is that what you're talking about? That
Correct.
You're bringing us a draft ordinance related to standards in PDDs?
It's a discussion related to PDD. It talks about potential ordinance changes.
Okay, all right.
So, and like I said, the more broad-based discussion in that Planning Commission meeting, and you can see that there was considerable effort spent on the minutes relating to the general cannabis discussion, because obviously that is going to be some major reshuffling. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to have the conversation as it pertained to medical marijuana tonight, but so be it. It's been continued, and we just happened to schedule this special meeting for next week, and I thank your commissioner for attending to all those, and that's it.
Any other questions for the planning director?
I just wonder if we should hold the meeting earlier, since it's a special meeting and we've got so many big items. No, because everybody's working.
We've published these notices, and
Oh, you
the
already published the
IJ,
notice.
and the
Oh, you said
time's
that.
already been published, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is unrelated to anything we've been talking about. I saw something on Nextdoor regarding parking limits and people removing the chalk. And so I think the town gave an explanation of why we do this. You know, why we chalk and, you know, why we have limits on parking.
Oh, where we have time limits on parking? Yes, because it's always been an ongoing battle in this town. There's some people that feel we have a severe parking shortage, and the businesses always want to have certain spaces that limit the hours and certain spaces that don't limit the hours, because they feel that if there's a limit, you know, then they get their business, their customers can come and go. It's been, so we chalk and ticket because people don't like people hogging the parking downtown right in front of certain businesses, right?
Yeah.
But yes, someone's going around and rubbing the chalk marks off. So the police chief responded and he said, we just want you to know that we can photograph, and the people ticketing do remember which cars they've chalked. And if you rub the chalk off, we will take a photograph and you will still get a ticket if you park longer than the posted time limit.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
I was just trying to make eye contact with all of you.
And I'm asking because I think it's good for the public to hear, you know, the position and the reason on this. I think it's I guess in this case, better than going to metered parking.
I should also point out that the chief also put in language about, I mean, he explained that merchants, you know, if you're a merchant and you have a hard time walking to your store, you can get a parking permit so that you do pay for a specified space that's close to your business. So there are provisions for that, but they try to keep the parking open so that customers
moving
can
along.
Come and go.
Yeah,
right?
and is this happening where there are signs with time limits, or?
That's where they chalk.
That's where they chalk.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions to the planning director? All right, so next on our agenda, I think, is commissioners' comments. Well, Esther.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. I thought that was my cue.
All right.
So I have one, and I was going to make the comment kind of incorporated into agenda item 3, but we didn't have agenda item 3, so I think this is the appropriate time for that. I was disappointed looking at the agenda for tonight's meeting that we weren't kind of dual tracking, if you would, our work on the holistic approach to cannabis regulations within the town, along with agenda item 3 tonight. We had started this process, the council had it and had multiple meetings, and we've had workshops, and in August, we got it to do the work on the regulations. And so we started that process in September and, had a good discussion on it. So my expectation would be, understanding what the council did at its last meeting, that we would be addressing their request that turned into agenda item 3, along with continued work on the holistic approach to cannabis regulations. And I think going forward, we need to do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to make any comments?
I do. I just wanted to bring to staff and commissioners' attention that the Planning Directors Association of the Bay Area is holding a one-day meeting on November the 2nd. It's all day. It includes breakfast and lunch in Oakland, and it's around the new USGS's Haywired study, which is a really interesting study of the Hayward faults, eruption and the impact from it. And the layers of GIS that they have is how many days that, how many roads are going to be affected, how many days we're not going to have water, how many days we're not going to have power, how many days we're not going to have access to cell phones and so on. And it's frightening, but I think it links very well to emergency preparedness that you've been talking about. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of it.
Can you state the details again? You said November 1st? I'm sorry, November 2nd?
Association of the Bay Area.
And thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Rodriguez. My understanding in glancing at it was it also folded into a larger discussion about disaster preparedness in sort of the context of how we do that, how we plan for it. So it's certainly a timely topic on a number of different areas. So yeah, BAPDA, I think if you Google that, you'll see that they have a whole series of informational workshops. They even have webcasts and things like that. So for items that you can't attend on your own, there's some really good speakers and informational items, PowerPoints, et cetera, on a variety of planning-related topics.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I have a question regarding Jess Larson's email. So I'm a little bit unclear on what, I guess talking to a citizen resident, what that precludes us from doing under the Brown Act. Does that mean that we can't talk to other commissioners or other, I'm not really quite sure what the rules are.
The Brown Act is a very detailed document. I'm not sure, but I think it's at least 40 pages. But fundamentally, it comes down to a simple concept, which is the public's business should be conducted in public. And so what that really means is that when people are having conversations, and that's kind of the key word, is that it's a two-way conversation, that it should be conducted at the hearing where all sides of an issue have an opportunity to speak. And of course, this is the concern when somebody representing one point of view wants to have independent meetings. It's not to say you can't do it. It's to say you really need to refrain from offering any comments. You can receive that information, but you just cannot formulate an opinion. Now, beyond the bottom line Brown Act aspects, there's also the appearance questions where, it could be any number, well, it could be any issue, any topic, any application where somebody says, well, wait a minute, what really happened in that conversation? I wasn't there. I didn't even have an opportunity to do it. So I can say that from a staff standpoint, it really makes sense to have those conversations at the meeting. Certainly, anybody that wants to send information, great. But those private meetings, you can do it, but it's a fine line you walk, and you really have to kind of limit your comments to questions. You can't, it's very important to not form an opinion or be seen as forming an opinion or staking a position. So that's with that caveat. And the other aspect is, yes, once you have that conversation, they could individually meet with each commission member. The commissioners are not to talk among each other. So, and there's chapter and verse court cases on this where there would just be this innocuous series of emails that touched on a majority of the commission. And if there's enough comments, boom, you just had what's termed a serial meeting and you violated the Brown Act. And it's pretty heavy stuff. So I know somebody who was a local politician who was the subject of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. In fact, with a hefty judgment over ex parte communications that weren't disclosed. That's the other aspect, is that when you do have those meetings, you're obliged to, at the subsequent meeting, you report that I met with so-and-so on the topic of blah, 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 and I did not, offer an opinion on that topic. Boom. At that point, you've daylighted that conversation. People, could follow up as they see fit. So again, the fundamental concept is public business done in public, and it really focuses on get that information out in the public context, and ideally have that conversation at a public hearing, which they seem to be great at doing.
Thank you.
And just remember, Janet's first line was that you have no legal responsibility to meet with these people. Okay, yeah.
I do think with the number of comments that we're seeing, though, it would be really great if somebody could communicate with them, not Planning Commission, but maybe staff, to say, can you get your recommendations together and we'll attach them for what goes before us? Because that's really what I want to see. I don't know who all these individual people are. I don't have time to meet with all those people, but I'd like to see their recommendations. If they've got something concrete. I don't feel like I need to necessarily be brought up to speed educationally, but I want to see what they want. What do you want?
On that same note, I'd like to see everything that you guys get from people where they ask it to go to the Planning Commission, period.
As a matter of course, we do that. It gets a little tricky when they don't address it to the Planning Commission. It's addressed to the Town Council. But you've definitely heard the concern that things are happening, changes are afoot, and they, feel like, what do they call it, the Telecom Commission or agency, and there's been no feedback from that group. So I could see where, if you're a member of the public, you're really concerned about knowing what's going on governmentally, and if installations are taking, which is completely understandable, and I support that type of communication. I was surprised that if there hasn't been that outreach, that it probably should be taking place.
I just wonder whether we should ask Marin Telecommunications to provide us a letter of attachment to our packet on what they're doing, or if you...
We can put that request in.
Well, and the other request that I heard was getting an understanding from the town of what's happening in our streets. So you have a lot of utilities out there that are coming into town that are installing or laying groundwork or putting in cables, whatever. So I think some of that question that I heard tonight was trying to get an understanding of what's being done in town along those lines. I mean, right now, for a variety of reasons or a variety of, other agencies, there's trucks all over the place right now. So I think that's one of the concerns that I heard from public comments, was not having an understanding of what's being done in town from a utility standpoint right now.
Yeah, and of course, notices were sent out with both Ross Valley Sanitary Agency and Marin Municipal Water District, and they've been very busy, and we're, of course, all experiencing the impacts from that work. And in some cases, for example, Ross Valley Sanitary, that's decades of deferred maintenance. So there's a ton of activity, but yeah.
Sorry, here's what, the sanitary district is doing in town. Here's what the water district is doing, that type of thing, just kind of as a general notice or information to the community.
I'll pass your request on.
Okay, I also have some comments, and I want to echo what Cindy said originally about the holistic approach to cannabis uses in town, and sort of my disappointment that we're not here tonight dealing with that. And my steadfast determination to deal with it come what may, before my year as chair of the Planning Commission is up. So with that in mind, I am going to propose 2 November meetings during which we would discuss holistically adult use cannabis uses in Fairfax, and I would propose that we begin at our regular meeting in November, which is scheduled for, I think we said the 15th of November, and then I would propose the 29th be the second date. And I'd ask you all to look at your calendars and see if you're available on the 29th. We're fortunate that November has 5 Thursdays.
Just to respond briefly, and of course, we're not discussing it, but the challenge is that when you have to do a quick pivot to dive into use permits and existing ordinances and look at modifications to that ordinance, it really does take all the time, because you're basically having a 1-week turnaround time from direction from the council to get before the planning commission. So I know that when we had our very good planning commission meeting and there was lots of direction and we did a debrief and we were sort of like, okay, this is where, generally we're looking, then, all of a sudden it's like, let's focus in on one topical area. And so that's what happened, is that, legal was there, and there was just a lot of work that was done in that direction. It's unfortunate that we didn't have the full public hearing, because I think you would have, well, you obviously read the packet, but even with what you were presented with, there was a tremendous amount of background work and questions and looking at various permutations. So when you're going from that council meeting to the next planning commission meeting, it puts the timeline for public noticing and staff reports on a very short leash.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not talking about going from any kind of council meeting to any kind of planning commission meeting. I'm talking about, here we are in October, and I'm telling you that in November, I want us to continue what we were going to be doing tonight. Now, that doesn't involve any council meeting at all. That's just us continuing what we were otherwise going to do tonight. So I'm confused by what you're saying.
Okay, first, let me just say I agree, and I will put out a request on the date, the 29th, for the entire commission and get their feedback from that. There was 2 commissioners that said, why aren't we looking at the broad brush on the cannabis discussion tonight? And I was explaining why.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I didn't understand what you were saying. I thought you were disagreeing with my plan to move forward and have 2 cannabis meetings in November. And I was like, at least I wasn't making it 1, because that would be a really long meeting. So that's, how does the 29th look for you guys?
29th right now is okay with me, the 15th isn't.
The 15th is the regular meeting, Michelle, so hopefully we'll have a quorum even if Cindy can't be there. What is your schedule on the 29th?
Right now, we're supposed to be doing a road trip during that week, so I just texted my partner to say, is it the beginning of the week or the end of the week? It's supposed to be 2 days, so I can't tell you right now.
What day does Thanksgiving fall on this?
The Thursday before.
Right, but what's the number? Okay, I think I'm here. Yeah.
And I guess to make it a little bit easier on you two, which, is always my top priority, everything I do, is we could break it out into specific categories for the first meeting and then specific categories for the second meeting. So the weeks in between, if we did all the prep work in advance and just took half of it at the first meeting and half of it at the second meeting, I don't think that then you'd be having to, burn rubber the week of Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Because I wouldn't want to make you guys do that.
Thank you. And just since we're now newly informed about this interesting 2/3 of the planning commission with a 7-member group, which says you only get to take 2 people out of the meeting. If Commissioner Swift can't make it, we've already been informed that Commissioner Green does not believe he can make the regular November meeting date. So that would say that the emphasis will be on all of the remaining commissioners at that date.
That assumes, though, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have a proposed zone change in front of us, which I don't expect at that next meeting we're going to have. So at the next meeting, it's only until we have, like tonight came about, where we're making a recommended change to the zoning code. It's just a regular quorum requirement. So, and I expect that at the next regular meeting, it would still be perhaps discussion, getting to the point perhaps of recommending to staff where we are and maybe looking to get some wording back or something like that. I don't see us I don't see us really at either of those 2 meetings theoretically having something before us that would fit that situation.
But I'm still going to be chair at the December meeting. So if we really take this bull by the horns for 2 separate meetings where we can discuss it, where Cindy can live stream us from wherever she happens to be during the meeting, and, Boonville. Then we can maybe come back at that December meeting where we're all committed to being there on the 20th. Go team, and get something finalized that then the council can have for January.
We'll proceed accordingly.
Okay, this is our game plan. Let's make it happen. Okay. I think that's it. Anybody else have anything else they want to talk about?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimously. Thanks, everybody. We are out of here before 9 o'clock. Oh my gosh.